at 8 a.m. or anytime via podcast. Our individual health is connected to the health of each other and connected to the health of the earth. We know the problems with the dominant food system: climate change, deadening soils, nitrates in the water, factory farming, injustice, concentration of wealth. How do we both as individuals and as a community step up and support a living food system which honors the earth? Tune to Food Freedom Radio every Saturday at 8 a.m. and remember to support your independent farmers.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Tonight, clear skies with a low of 64, then Tuesday, sunshine with a high of 87. For more than 40 years, the Great Wall Restaurant has been serving up Szechuan and Mandarin favorites. The Great Wall is located just north of 50th in France on the Minneapolis-Edina City line. Check them out at greatwallrestaurant.us.
Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. There are things people experience but never talk about. A shadow moving in the corner, flickering of the lights, a disembodied voice. We invite you to talk with us. Share your story, share your experience, because this isn't just your story. This is our story. This is Ghostbox Radio with Greg Bakken.
And this is Ghostbox Radio on AM 950, where every night we talk about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. My name is Greg Bakken, and thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you had a great weekend. It was a very beautiful weekend. I think we had a little bit of storms, didn't we, over the weekend? Or was that just Friday night? All the days kind of get pushed together on me. So it's always hard to kind of remember what happened over the course of the weekend. I will tell you one thing, though, is that I had COVID in April. And one of the things I love to do is take like 3-mile walks, daily 3-mile walks. I think walking is one of the best forms of exercise that you can get. And excuse me, personally, for me, it's more so than running. Running is one of those things that I feel like that it's just going to wear down all your body parts. Many people will disagree with that. Don't worry. I understand that. But walking is just such a nice, easy way to exercise. But I haven't done it since April, since COVID. So yesterday I did my first walk, one of Daly's, and it wasn't a 3-mile walk. It was probably quarter mile, something like that. It wasn't much at all, but I'll tell you, I feel so much better just from doing that walk and just being able to get out there and move around and move my joints and whatnot. Boy, it's incredible what that stuff does to you, and the fact that it takes a long time to recover from it. But I feel good. And keep trying to keep those up. And every day I move just a little bit closer to some kind of full return of health. It's still not there. You could tell I still have a cough. I had pneumonia at the same time. But, we're slowly getting there. So eventually, maybe something might happen that might resemble health again. We'll see. And also, I've had some people, believe it or not, ask about the ant situation here at AM 950 over, for those of you who care to recall, last week we had a siege of the station by the ant population, and they set up camp down at the stairwell over here, and we had traps and everything. And today I come in and there isn't anything. There isn't a peep. All their little ant tents are gone and everything else. So they took care of the problem. But I also noticed outside the studio here, there's a hallway, and the hallway has a bunch of offices, and all the doors to the offices are closed. So maybe what really happened is that the ants just wanted to rent some office space. I'm not sure. They're not here anymore. The doors are closed. Maybe they're off doing their ant business. I am really, really not all that certain. But certainly, we certainly have some. It's improved. Let's go that far. So we've got some comments in here. We'll get to those in a second. But tonight, this is something I wanted to talk about for quite some time. And when I knew that I was going nightly, I found this book, and it's the 75th anniversary of Roswell. It's a very important period of time when it comes to the UFOs and the history of the world, and also what's going on. Is there a cover up? What is happening here? It's something that has not been fully disclosed, but yet work is being done on it. And so I am really happy today that Donald R. Schmidt, co-author and researcher for Witness to Roswell, the 75th anniversary edition, Unmasking the Government's Biggest Cover-Up, which is co-written by fellow researcher Thomas J. Carey. I'm so glad that Don has agreed to join me today. And Don, welcome to Ghostbox Radio.
Well, pleasure to be here, Greg. So thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I mean, I've been reading the book, and the first thing that really sprung out to me when I was reading it, that I'd love you to be able to expand upon a little bit, first of all, and correct me if I didn't quite get this right, but it sounds to me that you and Thomas have really been the only researchers that's kind of continuously carried the torch of research for Roswell for quite some time now.
Well, the original civilian investigator would have been the late Stanton Friedman,
Yes.
the nuclear physicist.
Yes.
And at the time, then Kevin D. Rando, and I started our own independent investigation going all the way back to February of 1989. And we were with the Center for UFO Studies at that time, and we had the blessings of the scientific board, and specifically our scientific director, Dr. Mark Rodiger. And we were total skeptics. We were so confident we would make a single weekend jaunt down to the land of enchantment and prove that Roswell was nothing more than something prosaic, as something as conventional as a weather balloon device, as the government still maintains, or something else on that order. And here we are all these years later, where even after Kevin and I parted ways, and then I started working with Thomas J. Carey, who you mentioned, in 1998. And to date, we've interviewed over 600 witnesses, either directly or indirectly involved with the case. And I've had now 7 best-selling books. The first was made into the Golden Globe-nominated movie Roswell, starring Kyle MacLachlan, Martin Sheen, Dwight Yoakam. I've led now 6 archaeological digs to the crash site, 2 with the University of New Mexico, still looking for physical evidence of the crash. But what I remain most proud of is the fact that we have spent all the time and effort tracking down every possible witness who could go on the record, and whether it would be with a sworn affidavit or a video deposition, or sadly, in the last number of years, more and more of the deathbed confessions, but down to a man, woman, and child, that they would swear it did happen. That first announcement on Tuesday, July 8th, 1947, that they had actually captured a flying saucer, was the correct, truthful explanation to what actually did crash north of Roswell back at that time.
And you got to think, if you have, and that's one of the things that's highlighted for this edition of Witness to Roswell that you can get through Amazon, there's a number of deathbed confessions, but just let alone, you said about 600 people interviewed, that they're all saying that this happened. There has to be something to that, right? I mean, you can't just ignore that and still be like, well, if the government hasn't said so, therefore it means that it's not true. I mean, there has to be something to that for all these people, independent of each other,
of course,
saying it.
Whether civilian, the highest ranking or highest ranking military, to civilian, even children. And the idea, as you mentioned, even deathbed confession. We've had judges, we've had lawyers, time and time again, tell us that we could take this into any court of law and win hands down. And then when you also consider that deathbeds are admissible, they are accepted as physical evidence in a court of law. Well, we can't throw out the Roswell just because we don't like what they're saying.
Yeah.
And then allow all the others, to stand. No. They either all are accepted or none are accepted. And I'm talking about every possible category as far as within a courtroom. And so to me, from beginning as a skeptic and then listening to both military and civilian describe the wreckage identically.
Yeah.
I mean, holding in their hands and realizing that they were holding something of an unearthly origin, as one of them put it, that they knew they were holding something that was not made here. You can't help but step back and go, what if they're telling the truth? I think it's too many times, and I'll remind journalists that even after they summarily dismiss someone's account on any topic, you need to step back and just ask yourself for the moment, but what if they're telling the truth?
Yeah.
And who are you to judge? You need to, flesh out an investigation, talk to additional witnesses, and then see where it goes. And that's what we did, Greg. We essentially allowed the evidence to take us wherever we arrived, wherever it did. We didn't have any preconceived notions or theories or hypotheses as what happened. We investigated all the alternative simultaneously, and we found them all lacking any eyewitness testimony, any documentation. They had no bearing as far as in truthfulness. So what are we then left to do except actually then accept the eyewitness testimony? And for that matter, what is history made of but nothing more than eyewitness testimony?
Absolutely. So why is, and I know this is probably the number one question that you get asked, perhaps of all time, is why is the government stopping us from finding out the truth about this place?
Certainly back at the time, back in 1947, the beginning of the Cold War, and just 2 years before, with the first detonation at Trinity in New Mexico, the atomic bomb, and then the two bombs, Little Boy and Fat Man, as far as over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, ending World War II. Mm-hmm. The race as far as in developing atomic energy, atomic weaponry, was at the forefront. And then you have this happen. You have the recovery of a craft of unknown origin. And you don't know if it's a vanguard of an approaching invasion. You don't know from where, from why, or from who. And as a result, all you can do is stall for time in hoping that you are able to essentially find the on button, possibly reverse engineer some of this advanced technology, but above that, establish what we're dealing with here. I mean, what does this represent? And if there's anything to be garnered as far as from the technology, that you beat your opposition to the point that we find as far as access to this new technology before the Russians do, before any other country should. And so perfectly justified at that time.
Sure.
So through the years, and as most cover-ups go, they become self-perpetuating, that a stigma will develop, it becomes taboo, you get labeled a conspiracy kook if you question anything about it. And so it tends to take care of itself. It maintains its own cover-up, so to speak. But then in recent years, as we have had more and more military people step forward, specifically from the Navy, describe objects that clearly defy the laws of physics, conventional explanation. And now we actually have hearings.
Yeah.
We had hearings back in 66, which lasted all of a day. We had them again in 68, all of a day. Never went anywhere. This is the first time that they are actually talking about us having in our possession, us being the military, being the government, physical proof, remains, bodies, non-human bodies, And as a result, the bar has been now raised to the point that you can no longer just explain this away as being something conventional, because you've already put non-human bodies on the table.
Yep.
You're talking about interdimensional, you're talking about wormholes and time travel. You're trying to demonstrate that everything about this smacks of something from out of our realm, out of our dimension, off of our planet, so to speak. And you're the Pentagon, and you've been the arbiters of this cover-up for now 76 years. Well, you're not going to just roll over and acknowledge, well, yes, not only have we deceived the American people all this time, but we've also deceived the commander-in-chief.
Right.
We've deceived all of the elected representatives who essentially write our checks, appropriate our budgets. And you not only have a lot of egg on your face, but then there's also the culpability, the accountability, because through the course of that subterfuge, that cover-up, you have threatened and you have intimidated and you have created a level of fear amongst witnesses, including civilians, including children, that you're going to have hell to pay.
Yeah.
And so I feel that the old order, and I've often heard this from this growing faction of new officers in the military, they want this to come out. They feel they have also been deprived, that the old order has not passed it down to the new. And so they're rooting us on the sidelines, doing what we're not shackled and handcuffed to still do. And so we feel that we're truly doing a service to, all humanity in that regard. And I'd like to feel that the military finally feels that they can wash their hands of something that generation, they're all gone. They've all long taken their sins with them, so to speak. And sadly, a lot of the answers, a lot of the truth. But we need to move forward. And that's where we're stepping in and saying, we understand you had a burden that we would not have wished on anyone. You were trying to get answers at the same time. You were trying to keep peace and prevent panic. I mean, keeping in mind, Greg, that Roswell was just 8 years after the War of the Worlds broadcast. So that was very fresh in their memories at that time.
It is right. Don, why don't we do this? Why don't we go ahead and take our first break here? And when we come back, I have some questions in the chat room. Anyone else who wants to add questions, you're more than welcome to do so. And we're going to continue talking about Witness to Roswell. You're listening to Ghostbox Radio on AM 950.
This message is for all of you sitting in the passenger seat. And apologies if it gets a little uncomfortable, but how does it feel to be at the mercy of someone who thinks a random text is more important than your life? Someone who takes their eyes off the road while speeding along in a 3-ton hunk of steel. Freaky, right? Well, why not just ask them to stop? Or better yet, volunteer to text for them. It might be a little awkward, but believe me, you'll live.
Learn more at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
Hello, this is Ellie Krug with Ellie 2.0 Radio. Now my show will be on Saturdays from 10 to 11 and replayed on Sundays from 1 to 2. You will get to the best of Ellie 2.0 with talking about idealism with guests who come in and who are idealistic, who are trying to change the world. And you will get me, Super Idealist. Tune in. We can't wait to hear from you. And you'll hear from me Saturdays from 10 to 11.
I love my Toyota vehicles, so when it's time for me to get my service done, there's only one place I go, Rudy Luther Toyota. They know Toyotas inside and out. It starts with them checking your alignment and tire treads with their Hunter Quick Check Drive inspection service. Oil changes, tires, batteries, wipers, no matter what you need done, they can help you with reliable Toyota parts and the best service team in Minnesota. Check out their website, rudyluthertoyota.com, for service and part specials just for Toyota vehicles. Get your Toyota serviced at Rudy Luther Toyota, 394 and 169 in Golden Valley.
Connections Radio Show is all about tapping into our hardwired hunger to connect. We examine meaningful connections to ourselves, our community, and the world around us. By opening the door to innovative insights by a wide variety of interesting guests, we'll make the connections to something bigger than ourselves. Join me, Lori Fitz, your host of Connections Radio Show, and together we'll make the connections. Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
And don't forget that this Wednesday, August 2nd, how is it already August? My goodness. Ghost Stories and Beyond returns to Billy's Bar and Grill in Anoka, Minnesota. That's going to be at 6:30 p.m. Once again, that's at Billy's Bar and Grill in Anoka. You can come out, see Shar Savoy and myself as we talk about all sorts of wonderful ghost stories, stuff that we've experienced. But don't forget, folks, this is where we get to hear from you as well. Come out there. Tell us your story. Tell us your experiences, because that's what it's really all about. And that's, quite honestly, that's the fun part about it. I hear my stories all the time. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Have you gone out any investigations this year? Have you done anything that you would like to talk about? Would love to hear about it. $10 to get into the event. This does not include food or drink, but the food, for example, if you like burgers, it's half-price burgers over at Billy's on Wednesday, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I definitely would recommend that everybody go and check it out. And if you can, I mean, you got to be local, of course. That's the only thing. And also, we still have some tickets left for to see Dave Schrader, August 18th through 20th. Tickets are still available. The Anderson House Hotel, which is where we're having the event, the hotel itself is sold out, but that doesn't mean you can't get tickets to the event to go. We have a handful of tickets left. If you get tickets, go to charvinity.com. In the menu, it'll say events. And what you can do there is you can get a ticket. We'll send you a note that says where you can go and get to stay, get a hotel, get an Airbnb. We'll help you any way we can to help you find a place. But definitely check it out. Dave has not investigated this place before, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Our guest today is Donald R. Schmidt, Witness to Roswell, 75th anniversary edition, Unmasking the Government's Biggest Cover-Up, co-written by fellow researcher Thomas J. Carey. The book is available on Amazon. I picked it up. I picked up the Kindle version at the beginning, or I think it's probably at the end of June that I had done so. And it's a very, very good book. Don, do you mind if we get some questions from the comment section?
By all means.
Well, we only have one, I guess, so far, but anyone who wants to ask a question, please put it into the comments. We'll ask it. I mean, this is a great resource to ask, probably easily one of the best researchers on this subject, and we have them here. So if you have questions, definitely ask it. And Ernie asked the question, what technological advances do you think might have come as a result of reverse engineering from Roswell?
Immediately after most of the wreckage was transferred out of Roswell to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio, where they attempted analysis and made the first attempts at reverse engineering. We learned through recovered Freedom of Information Act documents that Wright Field, which would become Wright Pat within a number of months, had contracted Battelle Institute just down the road in Columbus, Ohio, with the assignment of developing self-healing metal. Now, the memory material at Roswell is classically described as paper-thin, metal-like material that you couldn't cut, you couldn't burn, even a bullet wouldn't penetrate. But you could fold it, you could crease it, you could crumble it into a ball. And each and every time you would place it down, it would unfurl, it would unravel, it would flow like water as it would assume its original shape and size. So in other words, it possessed perfect memory. It was healing metal, so to speak.
Wow.
So here you have Wright Field contracting Battelle, one of the major laboratories in the world at that time, to develop that very metal alloy. Well, then the witnesses also described that there were silken strands of material, like microfilament fishing line, that you could hold a light at the one end and the light would emit. It would come out the opposite end. Well, what are they describing? It's fiber optics.
Fiber optics, absolutely.
Yet fiber optics wouldn't be developed for another 23 years, around 1970. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't the impetus, that it wasn't the origin of such, technology. So I know other things have been speculated, but I have to go by what the eyewitnesses describe as far as actual materials. And so they describe memory materials, and they describe, by all accounts, fiber optics. So those would be the two as far as specific materials that may have indeed been reverse engineered at Roswell.
And what amazing pieces those would be. I guess the thing is, like, and I don't expect you to know this or anyone really to know this, but it'd be interesting to know, such a advanced craft. I wonder what caused it to crash in the first place.
We've been able to document, Greg, that there was a severe lightning storm the very night in question. The crash took place late evening of July 2nd, 1947, between 11:30 in the evening. And based on the Stallion Weather Network, we secured the documents. There was a severe thunder lightning storm that came off of the Capitan Mountains to the west at that very time. And as a result, even the ranchers would describe that between the thunderclaps, they heard what sounded like an explosion. So one theory is that it was struck by lightning. Okay, fine. We can't prove that. The other is that it was a internal malfunction, that something happened to disable this craft. The other thing, which I generally turn a deaf ear to, but I've had a radar engineer, formerly with the CIA, who I interviewed last year, and he resurrected as far as my need to research the possibility that it was radar. And the reason he suggested was he had me spell out exactly where all the radar facilities were at that time. And there were even radar tracking facilities based on the White Sands Proving Grounds and their testing of the captured German V-2 rockets that they were launching post-World War II. So you had radar at White Sands, you had radar at Roswell, you had it at Cannon Air Force Base in Clovis, New Mexico, you had it at Kirtland in Albuquerque, and you had it in Vaughn, and you had it west of Socorro. So he then asked, if you were to draw circles as far as the radar lobes, where do they all intersect? And interestingly enough, they all intersect in that very county, Lincoln County, where this took place. And then he brought up the fact that because radar was in its infancy at that time, there was no regulation of the frequencies, the power that was being transmitted. And as a result, there was a lot of interference. So just imagine if all these different frequencies are overlapping. And what if, and he said, if you check, you will find that our own aircraft were having a lot of instrument problems within those regions. So I intend to look into that. And I want to, as far as research, what the powers of their systems were, respectfully. And then he said, send them all to me, and we'll just see. We'll test in a lab. We'll see what type of electromagnetic effects it may have had on such a device. So it'd be an interesting test.
That would be really interesting. And then the follow-up, Ernie, who had asked the first question, he had also asked if stealth technology originated from the stuff picked up from Roswell.
Nothing described by the eyewitnesses to suggest any stealth like material. Yet we know that UFOs are often observed visually, and yet there is no radar confirmation.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll never forget, I was speaking over the phone with a Colonel Richard Mitchell, who was in charge of Army intelligence at the Pentagon. And he was assisting me in trying to pull the records of some of the former intelligence officers stationed at Roswell and 47. And we were having, very few results, really finding out anything, as though there was even a bit of a black hole situation going at that time. And then we were talking about technology, and all at once he blurted out, "Well, where do you think we got the stealth technology?" So whether it was a Freudian slip or he was trying to help me, but he actually made that comment. Where do you think we got the stealth technology?
Wow.
So,
wow. And then, do we have an idea what the craft looked like?
Only from the remains of the pod, the capsule, because we had a debris field that covered an area of almost a mile long. And then you had a final impact site about 25 miles from there, 35 miles north of Roswell. And it was described egg-shaped, about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. So was this the internal cabin, like an escape pod?
Sure.
We can only speculate, but we have them. So I guess it's hardly a stretch to even question that they might have had them even at that time.
I mean, if they're going to be more advanced and be able to travel through great distances, it seems not unreasonable to think that. We're talking with Donald R. Schmidt, co-author and researcher to the book Witness to Roswell, Unmasking the Government's Biggest Cover-Up. We've been talking about this is the 75th anniversary of this. If you have any questions, please put them. If you're watching us on a Facebook Live or Twitter or YouTube, please put a question in. I'll be happy to ask that to Don. The $1 million question for me, though, is the talking about the bodies, the alien bodies. What was recovered?
There were 4 bodies recovered, and 2 of them were about 2.5 miles southeast of the debris field, atop a bluff that we call the D. Proctor site, because he was the one who identified that location.
Sure.
And whether the bodies were, sucked out from the decompressurization of the craft or the percussion of the explosion, again, who can tell? But 2 bodies atop that bluff, and then at the impact site, 2 additional bodies and a survivor. We have both military and civilian eyewitnesses to the survivor, not only at the impact site, but also transported back to the base, the gate that they came through, the hangar that the bodies and the survivor were taken to, and then the base hospital, and then the way they were all loaded up and taken to Wright Field. I can tell you, even the 2 flights and the 2 B-29 bombers, one was called, one was actually a C-54, I should say, that was piloted by O.W. Pappy Henderson, and the other was a B-29 called the Straight Flush, which was piloted by Colonel James Eubanks. And so I can even tell you their destinations. One flew directly to Wright Field, and the other to Carswell Army Airfield in Fort Worth. And that was going up the chain of command from Roswell.
So the one that survived didn't live very long, right?
No. We have the account beyond Roswell of Colonel Marion Magruder. He was a triple ace from World War II. He also went by the name Black Mac because he was that highly respected fighter pilot.
Sure.
And he was part of the War College class of 47, 48. And he would tell his 5 sons independently about the War College being assigned to Wright-Patterson sometime after Roswell. Well, we've been able to document that he was there in April of 1948, so not quite a year later. And according to Magruder, what he told his sons was they were not only permitted to handle the memory material from the crash, but they were then taken to a darkened room. The lights came on, and then within a glass walled area was the survivor. He was sitting there on a chair, and he said his heart just went out to it because he could sense that we were treating it like a guinea pig.
Treating it poorly.
That we were testing it and probing it and injecting it and whatever else, our medical doctors could, devise as far as some form of testing. And it was his information that it did not live much longer thereafter.
Do you think it died because of us?
That was his impression, that he felt that it died as a result of all of the almost, laboratory brutal, the testing that had no, you would think for a unique specimen, for something, again, the first visitor potentially, and that you would take every measure to keep it alive.
Absolutely. How that's disgusting, quite frankly. Let's.
But it is human nature, isn't it?
Totally.
Science is first. We go for the science as opposed to the humanity.
Ask questions later. Bring in humanity afterwards. Yeah,
right,
absolutely. Right. Don, why don't we do this? Let's go ahead, take another break here. When we come back, I want to talk more about this being that was found and them in general, plus your questions. If you have any, please put them in the comments. We're talking to Donald R. Schmidt about Witness Roswell, and you're listening to Ghostbox Radio on AM 950.
Why must the world be so cold? They've gone against what was told. Thinking rape is cool? Think about it. They think it's not wrong. Violence against women, the rape, the abuse, the emotional, physical, they all hold the hate. Think about it. Is it right or wrong? What attracts you? I'm not saying no names, but you laugh. Talk about it like nothing is wrong. Think about it. They all hold the hate. Gotta stop the violence. Stop the hate. Think about it.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
July is the annual store-wide sale at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces. Come see our diverse selection of wood, gas, or electric fireplace products for indoor and outdoor living. And right now, Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces can assure you the best price of the season on every product in the store. Let Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces help you choose and experience the joy of sitting by a fire.
Summer is a great time to install your fireplace. You can find your perfect fireplace and have it installed and ready before the cold weather hits again. If you already have a wood fireplace, consider a fireplace insert. Come and see the entire selection at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces on East Franklin and Riverside in Minneapolis. They will create a fireplace that works for you. Efficient, clean burning, and environmentally smart.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces, since 1977, out of the ordinary products and services to make fire work for you.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Tonight, clear skies with a low of 64, then Tuesday, sunshine with a high of 87. For more than 40 years, the Great Wall Restaurant has been serving up Szechuan and Mandarin favorites. The Great Wall is located just north of 50th in France on the Minneapolis-Edina City line. Check them out at greatwallrestaurant.us.
AM 950 KTNF, St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
And welcome back to Ghostbox Radio. My name is Greg Bakken. Thank you very much for joining us. We are having a very interesting conversation with Donald about Roswell, the 75th anniversary. We're talking about his book that came out. Before we get back to Don, just join us tomorrow on Ghostbox Radio with Greg Bakken. Tomorrow night, we're going to have on Charles F. Rosenay as we talk about his book, Haunted Ghosts of Connecticut. Wednesday, we're going to have one question readings. So if you have a question that you want to ask a medium, please get that ready. Thursday, we're going to talk cryptids with Robert Robinson. And then we wrap up the week with Casual Friday, as we often do. So definitely, it's going to be a great week, and ask that you join us throughout the whole thing. Like I said, we are talking about Roswell tonight, and this is quite the conversation. And Don, I mean, I'm getting a lot of comments in the comment section. People are just like, this is just sad to hear about, what happened. I mean, obviously you're feeling the same way. I'm feeling the same way. And you bring up a very good point. Not that it makes it any better, but the fact is that, this is, in a sense, whether we like it or not, this is what the military was there for at that period of time. And as you even brought up, all of the circumstance around why even covering up Roswell, what do you have any like characteristics about these beings? I mean, do they look like what we understand grays to look like?
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
Yeah, what is it?
And even much to the credit of the witnesses at Roswell, they didn't call them spacemen, they didn't call them aliens. They talked about the little people, the little men, the small bodies. One of the personnel from 1947 at the base was asked by CBS 48 Hours, Phil Jones, well, how do you know they weren't from here? To which he responded, they sure weren't from Texas. So they knew.
Yeah.
They had absolutely no question of what they were dealing with. But unanimous, I mean, again, military, civilian, they all describe them as about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, ashen gray, larger disproportionate heads, large horse-like eyes, diminutive nose, mouth, and ears, and a silver gray jumpsuit from the neck that didn't cover the hands, but would cover the feet as well. One piece. And longer, arms than proportionate to the rest of the body, that type of thing. So it really, in many respects, served as the origin for the Greys, as they are commonly, called.
Yeah.
But it started at Roswell.
Did the one that survived, did anyone say it spoke at all? Like, I didn't expect it to speak English, but like any sort of tone or anything?
Telepathically.
Oh, it did do telepathically.
Yes. In fact, one of the firemen, he was a crew chief. His name was Dan Dwyer. And he and another fireman by the name of Ed Reeves, once they got word about the impact site just north of town, because the phone line, the courthouse, the sheriff's office, and the firehouse adjoined. And there was one phone line coming in to both. So as this was being reported to the sheriff, the firemen were learning of the situation north of town. So it was Dwyer and Reeves that drove out there, and they happened to arrive just before the military would come into the scene. And according to Dwyer, what he told his family, and specifically what he told his surviving daughter, Frankie, who I interviewed many times, that he was picking up telepathic messages as to the effect, I realize this is my fate. I've lost all my comrades, so to speak. There's nothing more that can be done. And Magruder described the feeling when seeing the survivor at Wright Pat within that glass room, that he could feel the sadness, and that his heart, as I said earlier, he just broke for watching what clearly was a superior intellectual being, and yet we were treating it like a lab animal.
Oh, that is just sad. And I think it's really important that this point gets made, because I think for so many of us, and not to lump anyone together or anything, but I mean, I feel like we do see them as just aliens, things that we don't understand.
You,
They're things.
Greg, can you imagine? I can't tell you how often I've talked to military. They call them critters. Critters. Or the fact that why are aliens always depicted as being naked? Like they don't even know enough to word. No. Every occupant case from Roswell on, they're described as wearing some form of garment, a spacesuit, even helmeted suits, that type of thing. But nonetheless, they're always covered. It's like we have to always downplay. We have to always diminish anything that may be a threat to us, to something beneath even a human level.
Yeah.
And to me, that's also deplorable.
It is. It's that thing about like U.S. or not even U.S. Earth. I guess Earthlings, humanity, thinking themselves always superior to everything else in the universe.
And when we deal with the secular humanists, who typically are the debunkers, the scoffers, and it's just a case of, well, we're king of the hill. There's nothing above us. We have all the answers, and they're threatened by it. Well, I'm not threatened by you because you don't have all the answers, and you have your minds made up. Don't bother me with the facts. I'm sorry, that's hardly scientific.
I wonder why, and this is just like conjecture, truly, but you got to think that this very possibly could have been some kind of military flight or something, that whatever this came from, if it was us losing a plane or something in another country, we would go after it in some form, but we've never really seen that in this case, have we?
No, not at all. And I always remind people that this was a holiday weekend, 4th of July weekend. Most military personnel were home on leave with their families. Nothing had been reported missing. They were not testing anything. The skies were clear. So what did this represent? When, as often as we have been out to the crash site, to the debris field, and as often too that I've been in a small airplane or a helicopter flying over the area, once you are airborne, you can see for 50 miles. It is high desert. It's totally unobscured. The point being that wreckage was out there for days before it was even reported, proving nobody was looking for anything.
Wow.
So that too, easily dismissed. We weren't looking for anything that had gone off course or gone awry.
And I also ask that also from the alien side, like if something, if there was a military sort of thing from the alien side, or an expedition of some kind, that to our knowledge, unless you know otherwise, that there hasn't been any sort of follow-up from another.
Was there an attempted rescue, so to speak?
Was there?
Dr. Lincoln La Paz was the famous meteor expert at that time, and he worked with the Manhattan Project and the Japanese Fugo balloon bomb situation. And he arrived from Washington in September, so just 2 months after the incident. He'd been briefed in Washington, and his assignment was to determine the speed and trajectory of this craft. And I hardly have to remind any of you that a balloon doesn't have speed and trajectory.
No, it doesn't.
This was his assignment. And we interviewed the very non-commissioned CIC officer, counterintelligence, it was Master Sergeant, I shouldn't say officer, but non-commissioned officer, Louis Rickett, who was assigned to assist him for 3 weeks in the field. And what they did was they interviewed all the ranchers throughout that entire region. And they found that rancher after rancher were describing for nights upon nights of observing glowing spheres of light that were projecting lights to the ground below, as though they were looking for something, searching for something. There were no helicopters, nothing within that region at that time at any of those military bases. Helicopters were also in their infancy at that time, and projecting these beams of light that lit up the whole hillside. We didn't have such power back then. So their impression was these were search objects that were looking for their comrades, so to speak.
That's pretty incredible, and kind of, it's just the imagery around that is just pretty incredible. With that, we're talking with Donald R. Schmidt. He's a co-author and co-researcher for the book Witness to Roswell, Unmasking the Government's Biggest Cover-Up. The book is available on Amazon. Also, as always, I added it to my Ghostbox Book Club page on ghostboxradio.com. If you forget the name of the book, or if you want to look it up, definitely go there as well. You know, and that was going to be a question I was going to ask as well, was if we knew how fast the craft flew into the earth.
Well, it didn't. You know, there was no impact. It was a midair explosion. In fact, even the intelligence officers, who were Major Jesse Marcel of the 509 Bomb Wing, and then a counterintelligence officer, Captain Sheridan Cabot, when they arrived first at the scene, after they were alerted to the crash, their first impression was midair explosion, based on the pattern of the debris field that had covered an area of 9/10 of a mile long. There was no crater, nothing suggesting impact. So it was a midair explosion, whether, again, struck by lightning or internal malfunction from radar. Again, we have no idea, but nonetheless, it caused the craft to break up.
Now, I want to veer a little bit. We have about 3.5 minutes left. We don't have a ton of time left, but as we've moved on 75 years now since Roswell, do you believe that we are, as a U.S. government, and I don't care about other governments, I just want to talk about U.S. government, is working with aliens now? Or do you think everything that we have learned that might come from an alien background, like reverse engineering, whatnot, comes from crashes?
I'm very reluctant to actually attribute any technological breakthroughs to alien technology. I see that in most cases it's a natural progression, and that whereas it may have served as a impetus, it may have served as creating the blueprint, so to speak, but we still had to follow through on it. We still had to actually develop it, make it work.
Yeah.
As far as I still maintain it's a cover-up of ignorance, that we can't bridge the technology, that it's that advanced. It almost would require that we would have to think aliens, so to speak, or that, as the famous scientist Arthur C. Clarke suggested, that the confrontation of we Earthlings with alien life form would be like magic, that it would be just, we would be awestruck, that we couldn't explain their level of technology. It would be like magic. How did they make that work? How does that happen? That type of thing. And for all these years, I think, as I mentioned, cover up of ignorance. We still don't know from where, from why, and from who. And I am more and more entertaining, as they did in the congressional hearing last week, where it even came up, the idea of interdimension, that it's something that exists around us and it's able to slip in and out. I asked the question, Greg, why do UFOs need lights? Why are they lit up like Christmas trees at times? As if that makes any sense. And why are they every shape and size under the sun? And then even the occupants that would have my colleagues suggest, oh, we're being visited by dozens and dozens of different races. Well, no, not if it's interdimensional. It becomes like they're able to take on whatever appearance they choose to. And it's like tricksters, and like the folklore of like gremlins and leprechauns and things of ancient folklore, the idea that they slip in and out, and we don't know any better for it because they're not existing within our plane of our realm of existence. So it puts everything on the table. Everything's possible.
It sure does. And we have about 20 seconds left, but I have to ask, if that alien survived, I mean, boy, where would we be now?
Oh my God. Where would we be if the Apollo space program would have continued? Where would we be if there would have been communication, as far as that we would have been able to then learn and take in, such knowledge, and especially of survivability. The idea that if another species can survive 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 years beyond us, I guess there's a chance for us as well. And so what a loss.
Absolutely. Donald Schmidt, the book is Roswell, A Witness to Roswell, Unmasking Government's Biggest Cover-Up. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure, Greg. We'll do it again sometime. Thank you.
I'd love to. And we'll be back tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
Hey, Minnesota, it's Brad Friedman, host of the Bradcast. You're listening to AM 950 KTNF, St. Louis Park, Minneapolis.